Hi, everyone. I just want to go over really quickly the ADHD diagnostic billing plan that I promised as a bonus document. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands exactly what I'm going through here. I want to say first that the rates that are listed here are based on the average Virginia Medicaid rates in my area. These are public knowledge rates, so just bearing in mind that we can't share commercial contractor rates. So this is all based on public reimbursement rates. So another thing I wanted to say before I go through everything is making sure that you're documenting times that are true to you. This is just an example. So making sure that each of the components of the time that you're documenting what you actually. These assessments are billed. I bill these assessments based on time, not on medical decision making, because it tends to be the better option from a reimbursement standpoint. So just kind of quickly, when we're looking at that very first assessment, when they're just coming in, we're doing a kind of global assessment, not just ADHD. I review that one a little bit. We want to look at any time that we spent looking at paperwork before the actual face-to-face time with the patient. And I just put 10 minutes there. That's usually if I'm reviewing maybe something from their PCP, a previous site provider, something that I can read through fairly quickly. Excuse me, not if you spend a lot more time doing it, then definitely document that. But I just put 10 minutes there. And then the initial assessment, I just added 60 minutes here. I actually normally do about 90. At least that's what I schedule, just in case I need it. But for example's sake here, I did 60. And then the time spent completing the note, that's of course going to depend on whether you have AI support or you are doing your entire note from scratch yourself. I just put 10 minutes here. Um, that's probably more if you are using AI support or maybe you're just really quick at notes. But that's just the number I put here. Again, keeping at least a average amount of time, being aware of how much time it takes you to complete the notes so you can document that. Bearing in mind, all of these things have to be done on the day of the appointment. So completing the note, everything, in order to count it for time, has to be done on the day of the appointment. So for this one, if we add up all of those components of time, we come up with 80 minutes. Um, for new patients, if you're going to do billing by time, the very top end is 60 minutes of time. You're going to bill the 99205, and then anything beyond that 60 minutes, in order to get billed for it, we need to use something called a prolonged service or a prolonged time code, where we bill for every 15 minutes beyond the top end of the code. So in this case, we did 80 minutes. So we have to bill at least one unit, not at least, but one unit of prolonged service time because it's 15 minutes of time that we use for this 99417 code. So we're going to do 99205 for that initial 60 minutes of time we spent with the patient, and then for every 15 minutes after that, we add a unit of this code. On this code for brief emotional behavioral assessments, we can use that for things like MDQ, GAD-7, PHQ-9, all of those screeners that we use. We can use those, and this code is to be used for assessment and or review. So if you send these out to your patients and they do them on their own, like you didn't actually administer it, but you do the review and an assessment with the patient, obviously going over these, you can still use this code. So you could add 96127 for up to 4 units. Most insurance companies allow four 96127s or 4 behavioral assessment billings per year. So if you use them all in that intake, that's fine, but just bear in mind that you've used them all at that point. And if you do screeners further through that year, you just won't be able to bill specifically for them in this manner. So if we look at, we did 80 minutes spent. We're going to bill for about 75 minutes because we have the 60 minutes. We add 15 minutes, that's 75. So we have about 5 minutes left that we just have to sacrifice because it has to be a full 15 minutes to use another prolonged service code. So if we look at approximate reimbursements, again, these are based on average Virginia Medicaid rates right now in my area. So the 99205 is about 186, 96127 is 590 per unit. So if you do 4 screeners in that initial assessment, would be about $23, $24 there. And then the 99417, one unit of 99417 is $25.94. So if we add all of that up for a Medicaid rate for that initial appointment that took you about 80 minutes with the patient would be about $235.98. And then if you decide that this patient does need a focused ADHD assessment, then you would bring them back for a follow-up visit. In this example, we spent about 15 minutes looking over their collateral screeners and any other collateral provider documents. And then we spent about an hour with them in the first ADHD assessment appointment. I find a lot of times persons that are struggling with executive dysfunction, those sorts of things, can't really have a hard time sitting longer than an hour. So you can schedule these appointments longer if you want. If you want to do 2 hours at one follow-up visit, you can. But not you can also just split it, and we'll look at a second visit as well here. So we're going to account for the 60 minutes of face-to-face time with the patient, 15 minutes you spent maybe reviewing things beforehand, and then 30 minutes I put here to start that note. So if the ADHD focus assessment is going to be split into more than one appointment, I do go ahead and document everything from the first appointment when I first see the patient. That way I can get it all down. I'm not trying to remember things. Um, so in this case, we have about 105 minutes for this visit, and we use the top end time-based code for this. So we would have the 99215, which is based on 40 minutes for a follow-up appointment. And since we had a total of 105 minutes, then we then have to bill 4 units of the 99417, remembering that each of these are equivalent to 15 minutes. So this gives us about 60 minutes plus the 40 minutes of time that we spent um, based on the time-based coding just for the regular code. So that's 100 minutes. But we spent a total of 105 minutes with this patient. So again, we have to sacrifice about 5 minutes, but we're billing as close to every minute of time as possible. So the average reimbursement in this area is about 152 for that original code, and then the 417s, we're doing 4 units of it this time. So if you multiply that, it's about $103. So that follow-up visit is about 256. Now, if we look then at what the second visit would look like, say that a little larger. It's essentially the same thing. We're going to do a follow-up visit code, so it's 99215, and then we use as many of the prolonged service time or the prolonged time codes that we need to cover all of our time. So in this example, I said patient. There's not really any review of notes for this appointment because you did all of that before the first one, unless you get some in between and you do actually need to review those. And then time spent completing the note. Again, that's going to depend on what kind of supports you have, AI or not. I just used 30 minutes here. Gives us a total time of 75 minutes at that second appointment with this patient. And then if we bill based on time, we do the 40 minutes, 99215, 99417. We're going to do 2 units of those. That's a total of 70 minutes, so 30 minutes from here, 40 from there. We again have to sacrifice about 5 minutes, but we're as close as we can be. We look at the numbers again. When we add it all up, it's about 204.52 for that second appointment. We look at this in the grand scheme of things. Over the two ADHD focused assessments, we spent about 80 minutes, or I'm sorry, 180 minutes, so about 3 hours. And then if we look at the potential reimbursement for these appointments, it's about $460.92 for both of the ADHD focused appointments, so about $153 an hour. If we include the initial assessment along with those two ADHD focused assessments, the total is about $696.90 for all three appointments. And a lot of times I look at it that way because for a lot of patients that come to me, at least they came specifically for an ADHD assessment. So I wouldn't have had that initial assessment to begin with if it wasn't for the fact that they came for the ADHD assessment. So it's more of a package kind of view that I look at this. So if I'm looking at the initial and both of the ADHD follow-ups, about $696.90. And again, this is a Medicaid rate um, for this group of assessments, about $162 an hour. And when you think about the fact that commercial payers, if you're a person that doesn't bill Medicaid and you're primarily billing commercial payers pay anywhere from 30 to 40 or maybe even higher percent than most Medicaid plans. So I just multiplied these rates by, I think it was 30%. I might have did 40, I can't remember. But basically that if you were doing just the ADHD assessments, it would be about 645 for a commercial plan and almost $1,000, about 975.66 for all three assessments on a commercial plan. So somewhere between 215 to $227 an hour for doing the initial, and then both ADHD follow-up appointments. A lot of this will depend on how you set your appointments up. If you do it exactly this way, where you have two follow-ups and your original initial, it will run exactly this way. If you need to break them up into three follow-up visits or three ADHD focused visits, whatever works best for your patient, just making sure that you're using these codes, the 215, the prolonged service codes, the 99417, and then for the screeners that you're also using this 96127 code as well, to add all of the potential reimbursements you can have for these appointments. Bearing in mind that 96127, we have to make sure it's on your fee schedule. For most Medicaid plans in Virginia, it is. And then for your commercial payers, just making sure that it's on there. If it's not, you likely need to make sure that you can request they put it on there, and you need to make sure that you're using the right modifier to make sure they pay for it. If you want to learn more about modifiers and when to use them and how to use them, feel free to take a look at the Cardinal Academy website. There's an entire class um, that is on psychiatric private practice billing in general, not just for ADHD assessments, but kind of across the board. So we can go a little bit more into that in that class, or we do go a little bit more into that in that class. I also wanted to mention that I'm sure someone will ask, well, can I just use 90792 instead of 99205? Yes, you can. It's just a matter of looking at which one reimburses you better. If you have a 90792 rate that reimburses you better than what the total of all three of these codes would be, then yes, absolutely, use your 90792. But that would just depend on what's going to be better for your practice. And again, we go over all of that in the billing course. So definitely take a look there if you need to know more about how to bill efficiently and most effectively for your private practice. I hope this helps. Reach out to us on the Cardinal Academy Facebook page if you have any questions, or shoot us an email.
Hey, want to know more about billing as a Psych NP? Check out our 4+ hour billing class and earn 4.25 CEs while you learn.